What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Raven. We have no idea where Joe is. He is missing in action, and I am with the basic expert to talk about his game Macuahuitl today. That is how it's pronounced, correct?
Pretty close, yeah. You can put the TL at the end. I heard it pronounced the way you're saying it too, because the TL at the end is sort of it is sort of abrupt like that. So
yeah, it's like sort of a clicking noise at the end for the TL.
Yeah,
and literally, as I understand it, it translates to sword.
Pretty much, because I mean, I named it after because to me, I said this on other streams. You know, when we think of like Western European fantasy, we think of the longsword, and when we think of Mesoamerican stuff and Mesoamerican warriors, we think of the Macuahuitl, and you know, that's like the iconic weapon of that culture. So I thought it was an appropriate name.
I did too. I liked your original title, to be honest with you, but you know, you had issues, as I understand it, with a fiction series that was titled Obsidian and Blood.
Yeah, it wasn't really issues, so it wasn't trademarked or anything. I probably legally could have still called this book Obsidian and Blood, but being a small-time creator myself, and wanting to respect another small-time creator, I didn't want to mess with them at all. So I didn't want to start a feud or a fight or an argument or anything. So he's like, "Hey, you named your thing this first. That's cool. I'll leave it alone." So.
And this is the weapon that we're talking about. This, I always thought this was a club, to be honest with you. I had no idea these. Like, I actually had to do a little bit more research on this one. But these little bits right here, they're actually pieces of obsidian that are like bonded into holes in the side, and they're sharpened.
Yeah. So it's the way they do it is so it's a wooden, almost like a cricket bat paddle, and there's a groove cut along that edge of it. And then they use pine resin to affix these obsidian prismatic blades into it. And generally the blades, they're not really sharpened. They're like automatically sharp when you flake them off of an obsidian core. They're like already, surgical razor sharp when you do that. If you're flaking them off correctly. But yeah, these are brutal weapons. Spanish reported that they would like charge at Aztec warriors, and they'd have like two-handed ones. And the Aztecs would like lop off horse heads with these things. So,
jeez.
So they're pretty brutal.
No joke. I thought they would cause like lacerations more than anything, or just inflict some really nasty wounds. You could die from sepsis or something like that. But I actually watched. I saw this on YouTube Shorts on my break at work yesterday, and it was a guy had a pretty solid block of obsidian, and he made a karambit blade out of it. Used the same stuff you were talking about, the pine resin and all that, fixed it into a handle, and then he used some kind of sinew to wrap it. And he says as it dries, it tightens around it and really pushes that wood there so it holds it. And I was pretty amazed. It was I've seen a lot of karambit blades, because I'm big time knife guy. And this one that he made, it was like he had little serrations on the inside curve, and I was like, yeah, you're not coming back from that one. But something like this, geez, if they're lopping off horse heads with it, dude, it's got to have some perforation. So I imagine there was probably some tearing too. So these things are absolutely brutal. But I wanted to move to this part next, and then we'll just I'll let you take it away, and you can just talk about whatever you want with it. But going down here, we got a lot of hex maps, and you just released an image of a character sheet for it.
Yeah, so there's a basic character sheet in it, but I tried to make a new character sheet that would allow for a wider like attack matrix. So it is white box, mostly the idea being pre supplement 1, so pre Greyhawk style white box. So just the D20 and D6s for the most part. And but one thing that I do like in Greyhawk, and I do like in Chainmail as well, is weapon versus armor or weapon versus AC. I feel like that really sort of plays into character equipment choices for a lot of players. It makes them really think like, do I want to use this weapon? It's really good against this armor class, but it's not so great against this one, but it's cheaper, but it does more damage, so on and so forth. So the new character sheet has a little spot so you can write down the weapon versus armor attack matrix.
Very cool. And then you have this section right here on your Kickstarter. Why is this unique? I'll be honest with you. I thought it was the setting. You know, the whole, like when you began talking about this like a year or two ago, I was like, I mean, you kind of piqued my interest right there because that was something I was looking to do. And unfortunately, I found out, uh, was it Castles and Crusades, Troll Lord Games? They beat me to the punch, which I wasn't mad at them. I bought it. It was fine. But you said there's not really been a game like this since Mastica and a few other games here and there. Most of these games, in my opinion, are a bit shallow and shy away from presenting Aztec society. It's usually watered down for our modern sensibilities. For me, that means it loses its charm and magic and intriguing nature. Authenticity in the setting and presenting it is a priority. It has been my goal since I started this project almost 2 years ago. Let me ask about that real quick.
Mm-hmm.
The minute this becomes an idea, what was the, like, what were you looking at, or what just kind of made it click that said, you know, this with white box D&D or original D&D rules, what made that like solidify in your head?
Well, I like all older versions of D&D. I like AD&D 1E a lot. You know, I like BX obviously, and I tried writing for those rule sets with this setting, and it just didn't fit for me. Like, it didn't feel right. I'm the kind of creator, when I'm making something, like, it has to feel right. You know, I did this with Cowpunchers, for example, where I tried to make Cowpunchers a BX thing originally, and I'm like, I'm writing for this, and like, this isn't working. This doesn't feel right. Like, I could force it and make it, but it won't feel like what I won't be happy with it. And so I kind of go with a lot of gut feeling stuff like that. So then I went back into, this is one of my first like non 5e books that I got, and I really fell in love with this book when I got it. Same with Delving Deeper. And obviously I have the originals too. I made my own little print versions of the 3 little LBBs. But once I started reading that more and like really trying to digest 0E white box, I was like, this is perfect. Like, this is an easier version of the game to manipulate to be what I need it to be than any other version of D&D, in my opinion. And so yeah, I went that way with it because it just, as soon as I started writing for it felt right. I even tried using because I like Travelers, so I was going to try and use the Cephas engine as well.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get very far in that one either because this is a class-based game. Like, because you're an Eagle Warrior, Jaguar Warrior, you're a Nwahali Sorcerer, you're a Plashteka, you're a Merchant. You're all these things. So like, it still has to be class-based, and obviously Traveler is a classless, it's a skill-based game. So I don't know. I just started writing for it, and it just felt right. So I just kept going.
And just real quick, I saw Moose, Mercurius, Damnedest Bastards with us, and of course Matt. Thank you all for being here. And I saw Moose says, I remember reading some old history book on Mexican Aztec Cortez episode where there was this title in Mexican society called Keeper of the House of Darkness. So metal. He said Obsidian would suck to be hit with. Yes, anything would suck to be hit with it, but I imagine Obsidian more so because you're not like sharpening that like I would my Swiss Army knife here. You would be sharpening that by chipping away at the stone itself. And of course, David Bachelor, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Matt, thank you for joining us. And said the third Brofidrium, which I'll be honest with you, I've been very tangentially looking at that here and there. But you mentioned Classic Traveler. I thought when you mentioned that, the first thing that popped up was the life path had to be the difficult thing to implement. Not so much the rule set, but without that life path, that rule set really doesn't work quite as well. And Stone Age weapons are a fascinating rabbit hole to go down. I'm going to do that because yes, I agree. And a lot of people, there are some people that are actually reviving that. They're trying to bring that back as a skill to use, which I totally understand why. But with the Aztec setting, like I have been telling people, and I did it with that retweet on one of yours. I've been telling people, if you really want representation of your culture in gaming, do the research, find those, especially if it's your own ancestry. Yeah, go do it. this is the kind of thing that, like, I wanted to do with the game I was initially writing, and found out Troll Lord Games kind of beat me to the punch. They had great research. That's why I said I'm not mad at them. They actually did. They've done two of my ancestral lines, as a matter of fact. Codex Nordica and Codex Germania I kind of count as one, and then Codex Keltarum was another one. And they've done so much, and I was just interested in them all, because I was like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Then you do this one independently, and I've got to say, I was surprised to see this. Goodman Games backed you.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
I have to give a shout out to Goodman Games. They definitely they got, I think their little backing of it really helped push the Kickstarter over the edge, because all they gave me was $1. But what it signified, though, is it sends an email to everyone that follows them. And so then so everyone got an email saying Goodman Games backed Macuahuitl, and they're like, what's that? So, a bunch of people came to my Kickstarter, and a few people backed it, and I have to thank them for that. I know some people don't like Goodman Games; they call them whatever, but I have to give them props in this regard, because I went to their profile on Kickstarter. I didn't realize this about them, but they seem to do this a lot with a lot of small time creators, where they just kind of go around and they give them $1 to kind of notify their followers that, hey, this is a cool project you should check out. So I think really cool. I think that is really neat of them that they do that.
Yeah, I mean, even that $1 to get that message out to their base, it was really generous. And I've kind of raked them over the coals about the gender neutral pronoun thing. I guess it was because they tried to kind of gloss over it. They tried to kind of breeze over it with, well, we fixed some typos, and yeah, there's gender neutral pronouns now. It's like, I'll take the typos, thanks. I got some earlier editions, so I'm good with those. I'll stick with them. But let's see. I've got to reread Inga Clenadon's Aztecs. I have not heard of that one.
I haven't heard that one either.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Role-playing an Eagle Warrior that was enthralled to ancient superstitions has been an eye-opener for RP. So Matt has actually played this.
He's Izel the Eagle Warrior in the play test. So
nice. So the play test, I got to know, how brutal is this game? Because I know if you're doing original D&D rules, it's got to be pretty vicious.
Surprisingly, they went into it knowing what it is. Like, maybe the Aztec dressing kind of really makes players go in realizing what this is. But so far, no character deaths. It's come close, but they've been playing smart, and I think that's just a factor of old school rules, where it forces player skill over character skill.
Now, for you, what was the inspiration for the setting? Aside from Mastica or those other games that just kind of like lightly touched on it.
I don't know. I mean, I've always known this was like part of my heritage, and so it's always intrigued me in that regard. I've always had an interest like in the iconography and the look and the history. Like someone else on Twitter had responded to me saying, like, when they were in history class in world history or whatever, the Aztecs was always one of the most interesting points in class for them. And for me, it was as well. And it wasn't just because there's a lineage there that's connected to me and my family through many generations. But I don't know. I'm always, part of it too is I'm always looking for ideas that I don't see many people doing. I don't want to do, I made a video recently about, like, I'm not going to make a fantasy heartbreaker. There's plenty of good games out there that are generic European fantasy. I'm always looking for ideas that there's not a lot of. So, Atomic Punk is post-apocalyptic. Cowpunchers is like a hard Western, and then this is like Mesoamerican. So I'm always, again, trying to find interesting ideas that I'm passionate about, where I'm always looking for, no one's done this yet, or there hasn't been many people that have. There's a niche here, there's a void here, and I think I can fill it, and I can offer something interesting. So that's part of it.
Well, I remember when you started, like when I first heard you talking about it, I was like, I was I mean, right then I was kind of like looking at different games and everything, like because I was just kind of getting back into this, and I realized that there were I couldn't believe how many different games there were by independent authors, and then suddenly you're talking about this, and my immediate reaction was, "What? Oh, I can't wait to see this." And now we're seeing it with your Kickstarter, which I'm going to go back to it just real quick because I've got to get a little congratulatory here because I backed it. I'm super proud of it. $10,878 of a $10,000 goal with 22 days left to go. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching out there, if you're spreading this around, you know what to do. You know what I'm going to tell you. Go back this because you're going to want it. You're going to want it because I want it. That's why. But this is, let's see. I mean, like just the artwork alone, just like these page layouts and everything. Was this your doing, or was this something that you found and put in? I know some of it doesn't look like your usual art, but then I can tell like there's some of it like this that I could tell it is.
If you're sharing your screen, it's not on the stream.
Oh, it's not on the screen. Good.
I
don't have my screen today. I cannot brain today. I have to dumb.
This is why Vic's with me, because he catches that mistake too.
So here we go. So like stuff like this, these page borders and everything, I find absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
It really does have that overall feel, and I kind of wonder because like I can kind of tell your art here because your art's really detailed, and then this sort of simplified older art, is that yours as well?
Those are like traced and redrawn things from the original codices, because the original codices are all like, I wanted to use the original art from those codices in this because it just has such flavor, but there's not very good quality images of them out there, so it's just like, well, I'll just redraw them because I felt like it would add to the flavor and everything, and I thought that would be important, and I was going for this red, black, and white color scheme, and obviously the original codices are not that. So I had to redraw these to make it fit that aesthetic that I was going for anyway.
So like right here where you colored the shield, the feathers, and the accents here. Yeah.
So, but yeah, those are all based off of original codices illustrations and everything. From when the Spanish arrived, they had a lot of the natives like write down about your people on vellum and tell us about it. So. And they drew a lot of stuff like that. So that was that's where a lot of those illustrations came from.
And you have several different classes here. You got the Eagle Warrior, Jaguar Warrior. I'm definitely going to need some help with pronunciations.
Pachteca.
Okay, so that's the merchant, the Nawali, the Otomi mercenary, and the Shorn one. What exactly is a Shorn one?
The Shorn ones were like the Otomi mercenary and the Shorn one are two classes that are gatekept by being able to roll very good ability scores. So the Shorn one is almost like the paladin in like AD&D or Supplement 1, and the Otomi mercenary is like a souped up jaguar warrior or fighter who's like good with bows and ambushes. But the Shorn ones, they were an elite warrior society, cult fraternity within Aztec society. They were called Shorn ones because of the way they wore their hair. They had a lot of it shaved back, and sometimes like in a little top knot or something like that. So they had a different hairstyle than generally the other warriors, and they were just like the peak of the peak as far as Aztec warriors were concerned.
And your Eagle Warriors were like on the front lines. These were like foot soldiers, infantry, that sort of thing.
Well, there was common warriors that were not within each, which I provide you as a player character, not playing as those, but I do provide like common warriors where they're just in like they didn't wear any armor, or they were wearing the cloth laminate armor. They had not performed well enough in battle generally to warrant joining one of those fraternities of warriors. Because again, the Eagle Warriors were their own special cult, and the Jaguar Warriors were their own special cult, and you were already elite if you were one of those. So
starting out as like a common warrior or a merchant or something like that, you would basically aspire to one of these classes here.
If you're going to, but I started at level 1 as an eagle warrior because again I made a common warrior. He's less than 1 hit die value, so I tried to keep that sort of old school balance where like a lot of NPC enemies like that were human, because the assumption in original D&D and in old school D&D is, and even in modern D&D, we'll say, is that as an adventuring character you're special, you're already different and unique compared to 99% of all the other humans in the world, or demi-humans in the world. You're already different. So I wanted it to feel like that. But the assumption being is like, if you're one of those classes already, you've already probably done a few heroic things. I talked about on the Kickstarter how like in OD&D, a level 1 fighter is called a veteran. So he already knows a thing or two. He's trained. He's already been around the block once or twice, and it's the same thing here.
Right. So they're unlike say like Dungeon Crawl Classics, where you're taking a simple farmer and putting them through a funnel. Mm-hmm. And then they come out the level 1 character. This is they've already got a little bit of that under their belt. They kind of know what they're doing. You're not sending someone untested out into the field.
Yeah.
Right on. All right. And let's see what this is a good one right here, because you literally have your status points, which that's what took the place of experience points with your game. Mm-hmm. The status points. This is where they accumulate wealth and they accumulate status in their chosen field here, mm-hmm. rather than, I think like your warriors, your human fighters, your paladins, and all that would do something similar in original Dungeons and Dragons. This one in that society was status everything.
Yeah, more the Aztec society was incredibly class based. You had your Macuahuitl, which were like the peasants. You had your Pachateca and the merchant class. You had the nobility class, and then within the nobility class, there was like 3 different classes, from like the emperor himself and then the royal family to lesser nobles and bureaucrats and priests and stuff like that. And then warriors were often mixed in there with nobility too. If you were a very renowned warrior, you were as well respected as many other nobles, and you could rise to that of from like a peasant farmer to that of a noble warrior through valor on the field. That was like the one way of, really the only way of class mobility as far as an Aztec person was concerned, was if you brought back enough prisoners for sacrifice or slavery, you were considered a hero, and so that would be enough to advance your station. But
I seem to remember some stuff like that. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but the movie Apocalypto, I think they did touch on that, where they were literally bringing people through the jungle back to their city, mm-hmm. and I think one of them had been poisoned or something like that, and one looks at the other and he goes, "Yeah, he's fucked," and mm-hmm. they pretty much had to leave that one behind. But I imagine it's probably even. It seems like it would raise the difficulty level just a touch, rather than bringing gold back. Mm-hmm. Now you have something perishable, and you have to protect whoever it is you capture, because that means you're standing in that society.
Yeah, and unlike original D&D or old school D&D, you don't really worry about your gold and gems getting up and running away from you and trying to escape. Whereas with this, like I in the book I mentioned how prisoners, when players get prisoners, the referee should be. This is a character that doesn't want to be sacrificed. They've lost. They don't want to lose. So I encourage referees to make it difficult for the players to be getting those prisoners back to their city state, so that they don't want to get sacrificed. So
now, because I haven't really seen the book yet, and I'm waiting for the surprise here, because I did back it. I was like, yeah, I definitely want an offset of this one. Are there rules in there for the GM to actually do that?
Yeah, there's some guidelines and whatnot, and there's also other methods of gaining status points as well. I have a whole like example table where like if you defend your city state, you can give the players this much. If they raid a village or another city state, you can give them this much. If they Obviously, the capturing of people it's 5 times, so you get 5 times the status points. If you just kill someone, you get the base value, but if you bring them back alive, that's 5 times. And there's other things too, like having a child. If your character becomes married and has a child, you can get status points because having children was important in Aztec society. Lots of little things like that. Discovering something, finding artifacts, and then of course I also have loot tables as well, and loot corresponds to status points. It's just like kind of it's more abstracted than regular D&D because the Aztecs didn't use gold coins and gems and things like that. They weren't really concerned with that kind of treasure as much. That was more a very high nobility thing. A warrior wouldn't really care. He wouldn't see gold coins and be like, "Oh my god, this is amazing." He, where are the victims at? That'd be his perspective. But I do provide loot and treasure for like if the players raid a village and you want to put like a loot cache of resources there that they could also bring back, which would bring them status. I also do that as well. So there's multiple ways of leveling up. I try to make it because here's the thing: gold for XP is a very good way of getting players back into the dungeon, getting them back into a dangerous situation. It's what motivates them to continue to do it. It's like, man, let's go deeper, let's go further into that dungeon. And I can't do that in this, but I still want to try and motivate players to like go out there and let's go join that battle. Let's go raid that city. Let's go raid that village. Let's go capture. Let's go find artifacts. Let's go whatever. Because you still need to have that motivation. And I know, like I did it in Cowpunchers, and I think if I could go back, I would change it. But the XP per session thing, I don't really care for that system as much. That was just sort of like a Band-Aid mechanic that I didn't know. I have a problem. I don't know how to fix it. But with this one, I really try to think about advancement and how to make it work with the setting, because original D&D, old school D&D it's just like inbuilt into it, and it works so well. And I wanted to have that same feeling.
Yeah, and then we have like I see this big hex map here, which I imagine all the hexes with trees are probably just like dense jungle
and forest. Yeah,
that's got to be difficult terrain to traverse, I can imagine.
It's not exactly 1-to-1, but I do offer sub maps of this too. So like I think if you scroll down, the next map is like you can see the smaller hexes within the larger hexes. So each larger hex is 18 miles and each sub hex is like 6. It's not exactly accurate 1-to-1 to Mexico, but it's close enough because I like that division of hexes, and it's just a nice clean division, and then it's close enough.
And these places where pyramids are, I know Tenochtitlan has been one name I've heard since probably about 2006. That one's been the focus of all of Mexico, and I keep hearing about those like step pyramids that are there. I imagine that was probably the biggest because that one gets the most attention. But I imagine that there were probably others that were just as big.
Yeah, obviously that the Lake Texcoco, which is that lake, it's not there really anymore. They built where this is like Mexico City. Mexico City is built on top of all this. But yeah, Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan are the Triple City Alliance. Those are the main. That's why they're circled. Those are the main cities of the Aztec empires, with Tenochtitlan being number 1. That's where the emperor resided. And then there was like sub-rulers, sub-kings in Tlacopan and Texcoco.
So this society wasn't just confined to like one small area. This was an empire. This was, vast and expansive and sprawling.
Yeah, you could liken this to like the Roman Empire, but in a Mesoamerican sort of feeling to it. They had tributes from Chalco, Aquilan, Malinalco, all these places here on the map that you see. Like these places were eventually conquered, and Tenochtitlan, Tlacopan, and Texcoco demanded tribute from these places, much like Roman emperors did. So, it was very much like, and it worked really well. This is why the Aztecs are able to conquer so many places, because they would keep stores of resources and food and weapons and stuff at these various subordinate tribute cities. So when their army was marching to battle, they didn't really have to carry as much because they would just resupply at all these places very easily. And it's what allowed them. They could stay in the field. I think I read somewhere that some of these armies stayed in the field for years, fighting. So it was like very easy for them to conquer with the system that they had of their neighboring native neighbors.
To note Tikla, or to not because I don't have my words, I don't have my pronunciation, and I have practiced this. The white dude practiced it and failed, guys. So okay, so let's go with Tanakh Tiklan. Who would they be fighting against? Because I know we've had the stories of the Spanish coming in, but I don't think that they fought with the Spanish until much later.
Yeah, if you scroll up on the map, you can see on the bigger map, you can see sort of the red areas are those are their enemies. So you have the Tlaxcala Confederacy, Teotitlan, the Yopetzinco Kingdom, Tutepec, and then the other one I struggle with pronouncing. It's like Tsinsutan Kingdom and Metzitlan.
That makes sense.
All those red areas were enemies that were never conquered, but everything else they conquered and controlled. All the white areas. So when the Spanish arrived, they allied with a lot of these opposing factions that the Aztecs couldn't conquer. Specifically, the biggest one was Tlaxcala, the Tlaxcala Confederacy. They did not. The Spanish allied with them. Actually, through combat, the Spanish fought the Tlaxcala first, and because they tried to ally with them, and the Tlaxcala were like, "No, screw you. We're going to kill you and eat you and sacrifice you." But then the Tlaxcala kept losing to the Spanish, to their 700 men that they first arrived at. And the final time they tried to attack them at night, they did some divination with the gods, and the gods were, to attack them at night or whatever. And I believe that's what happened. Regardless, they thought like, we're going to attack them in the middle of the night. It'll be this super well-planned surprise attack. We're guaranteed to beat these guys. And they couldn't. The Spanish held them off. And that's what earned the Tlaxcala's respect. And so they're like, all right, you guys are legit. We'll join you and we'll fight against the Aztecs. So, and they originally, the Spanish were invited into Tenochtitlan. They were actually very, the Aztecs liked them at first.
Yeah, they were welcomed in.
Yeah, and it wasn't until Cortez left and his second in command was left in charge of his men in Tenochtitlan. And that guy just bungled it. That's when there was the Night of Tears, where they just started slaughtering Aztecs, and it just ruined everything. And so, Cortez came back and he's booted from Tenochtitlan, and now he's made an enemy of the empire. And he's like, well, crap. We almost had these people. And it's an interesting thing to think about. Like, if that guy hadn't screwed up Cortez's plan, I wonder if the Aztec Empire would have still been around. There wouldn't have been a reason for Cortez to conquer them. There wouldn't have been a reason for him to ally himself with the Tlaxcala and the Aztec enemies. He probably would have allied with the Aztecs and helped them defeat their enemies. And then the Aztec Empire would have been like this of the Spanish crown. They would have been this another province, but they would have probably had a lot more independence, I guess, right? They would have been able to rule themselves a little bit more if that guy had not messed up. So
I mean, can you imagine like even a modern day version of this would be kind of interesting. I'd be a little, I'm not gonna lie, I'd be curious to see what Vic could come up with for this, because that would be kind of interesting. An alternate universe, modern day Mexico that's still very much Aztec Empire. Maybe all these territories in red kind of fought to a standstill, and there's just this tense peace there, or something like that. He could. I think he could do it. He's done it with D&D, OSE, and goodness knows what else. But that leads us into what Patty was asking. He says, so you've had this game written, and you've been testing it for a while. Will it be a one-off, or can you see yourself writing dedicated supplements, or will we see more in the basic expert zine?
Well, I need to get back to my zine. Like this has eaten up all of it, and I'm really thankful for people's There's not enough time in the day for me to work on the zine and this. So I'm thankful that so far people have been forgiving of me with this. But yeah, I want to support this a lot more. This is definitely like a pet project. And I've actually want to support the other games too. I have ideas still for Cowpunchers and for Atomic Punk with stuff. But I definitely want to write adventure modules for this. So I want to do the Spanish eventually. I want to get to like doing a Spanish supplement where they arrive. Because this game cuts off in 1517. There was a comment that was a bad omen, they were saying, of the future, and obviously the Spanish arrived in 1520. So I cut it off right there, like just before the Spanish arrived. So I do want to I do want to still support this and expand on it and everything. I think it needs that because this is such an alien setting. I do think there probably needs to be adventure modules to give ideas to referees and to show them the setting a bit more. Obviously, I go into great depth of the setting in here, but there's still going to be people that are probably confused about how stuff works and how the game will run through the setting. So, and I think adventure modules are always a good way of teaching that. So,
and Patty added, time runs out when you're doing your own writing, art, and layout. Yeah, no kidding. That's a lot of work. That is and I'm just like, right now I'm working on something and I'm just writing it. And right now I can tell you, like, I'm racking my brain for stuff. I'm kind of like bogged down in it. Whereas before I was like just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing stuff. Now it's like, oh boy, I need to get some detail in here. Oh, it's a mess. But yeah, when you're doing it all yourself, that's like crazy, insane, time consuming. Of course, Brian, good morning. Django, welcome aboard. And Django says it's super cool that you do it all, in his opinion. I personally agree. That's amazing. But when you talk about supporting this, I know with Cowpunchers, you've had like a Creative Commons license on that one, which every one of you should be picking up because he wrote it, I edited it. You should be picking it up. Support us. But you got that you got stuff for like that open license for Cowpunchers. I think you have one for Atomic Punk as well.
The SRD for Atomic Punk is just in the public domain, so you can like, it's just free. You can those rules are free, and then I have a 2D10 logo for my system. That logo, if you want to stick it on your book, it's in the Creative Commons. So you don't even have, if you want to make a 2D10 thing, it's just the Creative Commons logo. You can stick it on your book if you want to like really identify it with something I made. But the rules themselves are in the public domain, so you don't even have to give me credit.
Is this something under the OGL?
I use the 5.1 SRD Creative Commons license to reference the 5.1 SRD to sort of rehack, obviously like a 0E thing. But I'm trying to figure out, I don't want to put this under the OGL, but I do want to allow people to make stuff for it still. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of ways to do that. I don't necessarily want to put this book under the Creative Commons because I like the Creative Commons, but it is still somewhat of an imperfect license for exactly what I want to do. I've been talking with Greg from Chronicles Virus about, we kind of want to revisit our Guerrilla Game license and talk about that one. I think we just need maybe some legal help with that from someone who can look at that and be like, is this good or not? But I don't know. So I want to try and figure that out, and I'm not quite sure yet. But I could do like what I did with Atomic Punk and just release like an artless, stripped down version of the bare basics of like the mechanics and stuff like that, and release that in the public domain, or put that in the Creative Commons or something. But I don't know. I need to figure it out. I do want to like support other creators and have them feel comfortable referencing this if they want to reference it and use my ideas. I'm big about that because I think that's important. But it's just trying to figure out the right way to do it, and I'm still trying to figure that out. Been kind of experimenting with different games that I've made and seeing what I like best, and still trying to figure that out.
All right, thank you for joining us, Patty.
See you, man.
Love you, bro. And like I could see this being a very fertile setting for supplements, whether it's in the setting that you have right now or in future like future settings or supplements for it, future adventures, especially having to deal with the Spanish and everything. I've noticed though, a lot of your games tend to focus a little, not so much on fantasy, which this does have fantasy elements, and we'll be getting to that very shortly. But what it tends to focus on, what your focus tends to be, is a lot of history, which I actually dig. Like your Cowpunchers game is straight up Old West, and we're talking like Man with No Name. If we have to go with a series of movies, the John Wayne Western, the Clint Eastwood Western, the stuff that wasn't Weird West. Whereas you've done some work on Wretched Country that does focus same time period, same setting, but that one focuses more on Weird West and those kinds of stories like Pale Rider or High Plains Drifter, something like that. This yours would be more like the Dollars trilogy.
Yeah, Cowpunchers is more grounded, more the supplement I want to do for Cowpunchers is like a multi-generational campaign setting adventure that you could run that would be the Oregon Trail. So you have a party going down the Oregon Trail and then landing in the West, and then the game continues from there, and it would just be like this multi-generational thing. And that's kind of like how I envision that game, as opposed to like, let's go shoot zombies with 6-shooters or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I do have Atomic Punk, which is like, sci-fi pulpy silliness as well. So
yeah, that I was going to say that one seems like possible alternate future.
Yeah,
or might be closer than we think if they start throwing nukes at each other. But who knows? It might just solve climate change. That kind of. I've heard that sentiment around me. I'm starting to get sick of it.
I say this with full love because my ass is late, so I shouldn't be making trouble. But isn't that basically like the structure of Bonanza or like Lonesome Dove is both a Western and generational?
Yeah, I think the West is about generational stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think that's an important that was a big deal to those people, those pioneers and everything. So,
well, in a not a segue, but in a conversation recently, I've been talking to people about granularity in role-playing games, because I have this weird problem. I like pirates, I really do. Pirates are great, but I run into a lot of people who just kind of want to Pirates of the Caribbean it, where they put on the hat and they put on the silk and they kind of slob around, but they don't actually want to do piracy. Because they don't put together what piracy is. And I'm like, no, I want to run a boat, and I want to manage accounts, and I want to steal people's stuff. Right? Because piracy is a profession. And it's like, if we look at the Old West, although it's a wide range of jobs, because it's an era, not a specific job, it's like, no, you could totally set up a campaign that is, and you own a ranch, and you run a ranch, or you own a farm, and you run a farm.
There's stuff, you got cattle rustlers, you got all kinds of stuff that could happen,
right?
That would be a problem for even a game like that, where you could throw stuff at a group of players. They want to do something quote unquote mundane like that, but it could still be exciting and interesting.
So to put this in simple terms that most of our Netflix generation now would understand, we're looking at more like the Yellowstone prequel. What is it, 1884? I think it's called. I don't really know. I haven't watched Yellowstone at all. I really don't watch much TV. I don't have the time. But there's that, and then there's there's Lonesome Dove, but there's also Dances with Wolves, which is one I'm very familiar with.
You mean back when that director made movies that were good? I am not a fan of Avatar, which is just blue cat people dances with the wolves.
But like the generational aspect, you touch on it with not just Cowpunchers, but also with this as well, because like you said, having children in Aztec society, that was super important, because they understood in order to perpetuate their culture, they would have to, have it go generationally.
Yeah, at the very start of chapter 1 and getting started, I have like a a thing they would say about their son when he was born, because I thought, this is important. Like a character in character creation, your character's being made, your character's being born, and this is something they would say about their child. And it was like, here our Lord has placed him. Here you understand. You are notified that our Lord has given a jewel, a precious feather. A child has arrived in your laps. In the cradle of your arms we place him. And now we dedicate him to the Lord of Shadow, Wind, Tezcatlipoca, and pray that he will sustain him. We leave him to become a young warrior. He will live in the house of penance where the eagle warrior and the jaguar warrior are born. So like you had a son, and it was like it was a big deal. And daughters are too. Women played a different role in society. But yeah, the thing is, though, it might bother people, but again, I'm trying to be true to the culture. Is you only get the SP value if you have a child and you're married. So you got to be married, but to get that status point, because again, it represents your status in society. So legitimate children are part of that.
And I take it these that are on the screen now, these are the gods that they worshipped.
Those are just monsters.
There's a whole monsters.
Those are just various creatures that Kipakli was kind of a godlike thing, and same with Ishpushtiki. I can't read it from here, but I can't pronounce his name too. Most of the time, it's hard. I spelled it right. Or I pronounced it right.
Yay!
Ishpushteki, Tekwi. That guy was sort of a deity. He was related to Miglan Tekuchli, who is the Lord of the Underworld. But most of these, I don't stat out gods because I didn't want players fighting gods, because again, I'm trying to keep it kind of grounded in the semi-realistic, semi-historical, like it's historical with that layer of fantasy and mythology over the top of it, where it feels like you could commune with the gods, but the gods are not physically manifesting in front of you and you can fight them. Like that's not I guess you could run that kind of game if you want with it, but I don't give you the stats for that or the rules to do that in this.
Now, where would these monsters pop up? We've talked about the most grounded aspect, which is the people, their society, how they function, how they operated, who they went to war with, who they encountered, who they tried to ally with, and now we have these monsters. And I'm kind of like, we've looked at your research in the society itself. Where do these guys come into play?
So these are going to be creatures that will be in the wilderness. I'll give an example of a creature that I'll tell. Let me find its stat block here on my end.
Yeah, if you want, we'll share that screen.
Okay. Yeah. Let me. Okay. I found it here. Let me share it. Where is it? Here we go.
Here we are. Add to stage. Here we are.
So in my game, for instance, I use this creature here, and we'll look at it here. Tlashkanesh Quimili is this creature here. So you can see its stat blocks here. Everyone should be kind of familiar with that. So it is a legless legendary creature from mythology that is said to appear as a ghostly apparition during thick fogs over Lake Texcoco, the body of water that surrounded the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan. The creature had no legs and would drag itself through the city with its strong forearms, emitting a sickly moan that could be heard for miles. Its head was said to be a small human skull with sharp teeth surrounded by feathers. According to legend, the Tlashkanesh Quimili is a creature of the Aztec god Tezcatlipoca, sent to Earth to remind humans of their mortality. Emperors are said to be afraid of this ghostly creature, which was often seen as a bad omen that signaled war or a plague. For a few brave enough to confront the Tlashkanesh Quimili, despite not being as menacing as other supernatural creatures of Aztec mythology, the Tlashkanesh Quimili was still seen as a powerful and ominous figure. The ghost can only be struck with magical weapons. Its bite deals 1d6 damage and forces a save against paralysis. The victim of the bite is paralyzed for 1d6 turns. It can perform one claw attack and one bite attack on its turn, or a single moan. Its moan is terrible to hear and forces a morale check on any NPC that can hear it. Failure means the NPC will flee in terror. So And I have this NPC thing here because this is a game where I really think it's important to have followers at your back, as most old school games kind of require that. But yeah, these are the kinds of creatures I try to fill in a bit of flavor as to like what they are, and where they can be found, and some of the lore, like in the description of them and everything.
Wow. Okay, so if there's a cave system around, or if they're in the wilderness, if they're basically outside of their city, they could encounter these things.
Mm-hmm. We got the Queen of Medicine were warriors of a previous son, or giants of a previous son. So there's giants out there. You got an illustration here of them killing one.
Oh, nice.
So you got giants. The one here that we showed, this guy is bad news. This is pretty much, I threw it in just for fun, but he's pretty much a guaranteed TPK. when the Spanish arrived, he was pretty much associated with Satan. So like he's just terrible to encounter. The Aztecs were super terrified of him. So
I mean,
if they think they're encountering him, run.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny, as you've recently, as you no doubt noticed recently, people were talking about TPKs, and TPKs are a hot button issue again because having TPKs is mean, right? But within the context of this setting and this culture, it's like, no, the obvious answer when you see strange creatures like this, if you are not a super courageous person, if you're not a warrior of warrior who feels no fear, run like hell. That's the answer. Yep. Run like hell. It doesn't matter if you can take it or not.
And I can actually see a TPK kind of working out with this game, because if you have a TPK, that means the entire party that went off in whatever direction just disappeared without a trace. They've been unable to locate them. They come upon maybe the bones and whatever's left. They come upon the remains, and then they realize, we need to stay away from there.
Well, in a broader sense, if you're running a campaign, as we were discussing generationally, it's not without a trace, right? Your bold adventuring party goes out, disappears. They send a search party, like, where'd they go? And you just find their heads on stakes, and it's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Or withered bodies.
Right, or worse yet, they're still around, but now they are shambling undead corpses, which is like the extra bad.
No, that's a good point. Did they actually have that kind of thing, like the sort of lich or arch lich in their society? Did they have that in their stories?
I couldn't really. I add undead because I feel like undead are just iconic to this kind of game. But I have ghosts and stuff in here. They believed in like the dead being able to affect the real world in some instances, or there's 13 heavens, and our material plane is one of those 13 heavens, and it's all interconnected, so the material world, while appearing material, is still spiritual to them, obviously. So there's all this bleed back and forth between these powerful dead, ghostly and godly divine things coming from both below and above, and got to be careful. Yeah. But I couldn't find anything exactly like a lich or anything like that. There's definitely like undead gods or gods that have died and come back and stuff like that, but it's not quite like what we would traditionally in Western fantasy be like, oh, there's a lich and he has a phylactery and all that kind of stuff.
Or even just like a zombie.
Yeah, not quite like a zombie. I add like zombie type stuff, but I view them more as just like there's a sacred site, and these are just restless undead warriors that protect that site. They're Toltec and Olmec warriors of old who are cursed or blessed to protect some kind of sacred point or something like that. I add stuff like that. But it doesn't play off the same as like necessarily shambling, brain-eating zombies or something like that.
Right. They're not just like roaming around. They're actually standing guard.
They're serving they're serving a purpose. So
okay. Well, we seem to have lost Joe. I don't know what happened, but anyway. let's go into the religious aspect of their society, because I know that played such a huge role. They were very, very much into their religion, and they did perform human sacrifices. You did not shy away from that. I saw that on the Kickstarter page. There's that dude just laying there dead with his heart cut out. I was like, okay, yeah, we definitely did not shy away from the very ugly stuff. And I do want to say, before we get into it, yes, this is going to depict a lot of graphic descriptions and images of violence and death. This is part of every society, ladies and gentlemen. Every society historically has had this, but we're going to be talking about that right now. Just go ahead and take it away, dude.
Yeah, I mean, we're a very religious society. I try and talk about the fact. Let me see if I can get to. I'll read this section on sacrifice.
Sure.
So the Aztecs practice of human sacrifice is a well-known aspect of their civilization, characterized by violent and bloody rituals. While this practice cannot be justified, it is important to understand the context and beliefs surrounding it. The Aztecs viewed sacrifice as a religious and spiritual necessity, believing that offering blood to the gods was crucial for the sun to rise and for life to endure. However, sacrifices were not randomly or recklessly conducted. And, there was a purpose to them, essentially. I'd really try and hammer home, like, I'm not justifying this stuff. I'm not saying it was, like, good. But within the context of their society, it wasn't, and I said this on other streams, they weren't just like, oh, isn't it fun to just rip hearts out and kill people? This is just great. I love doing this. We're crazy. It was like, we have to do this or the world ends. That was their mentality,
And just to be clear, even modern day Christianity, depending on denomination, will practice some form of sacrifice. And by that, we mean giving up something that is precious to you. In this, I know in my own, I tend to make offerings at my altar. These are not me killing people or animals or harming any. It's literally just water most times. Sometimes it's something else, maybe food or something like that. Sometimes beer or liquor. Just make those offerings. But even in modern society, we still do it, but not to that level.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still very important that we, I think they went to an extreme trying to get favor from their gods, just as we do today.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to either give thanks or give something else, but sacrifice, in terms of the true definition of the word, we still practice it today. But with this, I'm glad you put it in there, because I feel like glossing that over would do like what you said before. It will water it down for modern audiences, and modern audiences, when they see something like this, when they see a presentation, they tend to think that that's accurate. There are people that still think the Vikings were illiterate, and it's like, no, they had an alphabet. They did have ways of writing down stuff and trying to record it before their culture was nearly eradicated. And I'm looking at this page here, and I don't know, I really appreciate the honesty and sincerity about it. I mean, as horrifying as it can be, I still appreciate.
You got to the next page here.
I'm gonna put forward a nasty opinion. People are gonna hate me now. I think that watering down your setting to make people comfortable also shows a fundamental level of ignorance. I have a friend who roped me into a game of Amber Diceless, and you hang out after game, you get to know your fellow players, and there's one guy who's into mythology and the like, and that's cool. I'm into that stuff. But in the course of conversation, human sacrifice as a concept was brought up, and he's like, "Oh, that stuff's evil." I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, it's just universally evil." It's like, how can human sacrifice be innately evil by a Christian standard for societies that never knew Christ existed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because for them, that's just life. That's just what we do, right? I'm constantly in conversations trying to tell people about this idea that from anthropology, that you have to treat indigenous and sovereign cultures with respect, because you can't judge them by your standards if you're not in it, because you get really subjective opinions that are just wrong. And that's one of the things. Like, here, the Aztecs, yeah, they sacrificed people, but it wasn't malevolent, even if we don't like the results. And most of them were volunteers if they weren't
Yep.
taken in war. And even if they were taken in war, it was Mesoamericans fighting other Mesoamericans who knew the score, who knew if they were taken in battle, they would then be sacrificed. And that was not perhaps sought, but it was still laudable, because your soul was being given to the gods, you know?
Yeah, warriors that died or were sacrificed were guaranteed a different afterlife than those that went to old age. Like, actually,
Right.
you really didn't want to get to old age in Aztec society. You had to go to Mictlan, and Mictlan had 9 levels that were absolutely terrible that you had to get to before you could get to Solace and Paradise. So, as a warrior, you got to skip all that. You know, if you got killed in battle or you got sacrificed, like, you got to skip all that. And you just got to go straight to
Well,
living with Tanatua for a couple of years, and then you were reincarnated as a hummingbird at that point. So
well,
at
because
least,
as a warrior, you're sacrificing your life for your culture, both in battle and on the altar. You know, that's laudable in that society, where you're basically owned by the society, which is another component that I have trouble explaining to people in conversation. Is like, if your game is about a militarized society or about a pre-industrial, pre-modern society, you might not have freedom as we understand it, because you don't belong to you. You belong to your parents, or you belong to your society, or you belong to your priests, who decide where you fit. Right?
yeah. And you know, for males too, like, every male was expected to pick up his weapon and fight at some point. All males, it didn't matter what age you were, what social class you were sent to essentially a public school that taught you how to be a warrior. Now, you might not have been deployed, or like, if you were a farmer, you might have been sent back to the farm, but you at least had the training, so that if you did need to be called upon, you had the training, you kind of knew what you were doing, you could pick up your weapon and fight. And that was expected of every male in Aztec society.
So that shares some similarities with Scandinavian society, and with certain Greek city states as well, namely Sparta, because that's one of the ones that gets a lot of light shined on it. But yeah, just having the able-bodied male, even though it's Scandinavian, most of your Viking travelers would be the like the merchant class, basically. They would be selling the wares that were made at home in exchange for like gold and silver, and bringing that back. The raiding parties were different, because they were sort of like you said, Joe, pirates. And then there were the warriors, the ones that actually were militarized, that went out and did stuff. And my a question that I did have that came up in my head while this was being discussed: would there be a means of, after a character is killed in battle, would there be a means of like exploring the afterlife?
Not really. You could, because people ask, like, oh, if you die, you can just go to Mictlan, but it's like, a warrior didn't go to Mictlan.
Right.
Like, a warrior, you would liken the realm of Tanatua. I mean, for you guys to like understand it with what you guys are into, with like Valhalla, you know, where you didn't have to really suffer anymore. You just got to go enjoy yourself and have a good time. You were excited to go do it. Like, I try and place within the book. Let me see if I could find it here. I try and place within the book different things, different quotes that would kind of try and get players in the mindset of, you know, that your character's going to die, and these people are not afraid of death. I could find it. I can't find it. I don't remember what page it's on. Because I try to have a lot of these quotes are like real quotes from Aztec emperors or poetry or things like that. That inserted in as like flavor text.
Right.
And one of them was really good that kind of brought the point home. But I can't find it.
Well, I think there's this one. Who is to govern and rule the world? Who is to be the sun? That was a good one. That's a good bit of flavor right there. Because
that leads to sacrifice, because every world, every sun was created with a god sacrificing himself in a sacred fire. And that's another reason why Aztecs practiced it, was because it was like a thank you to the gods that gave their life to become the sun, to take on a new form that humans would do and mimic the same thing.
So these gods were something they were like heroes. They were something to which to aspire. They were the example.
This one here, like, here, no one fears to die in war. This is our glory. This is your command, O giver of life. This is from a poem, an Aztec piece of poetry, where you were this is just what was expected of you. They gave you life, and so they can ask for it back in war at any moment. So yeah,
it's not yours, mortal.
Well, we were talking about similarity in other ancient cultures, but ironically, there are modern similarities in comparison as well. When we were talking about the legless half ghost that comes off of the lake,
Mhm.
right? What I was thinking, quite ironically, there is a half ghost in Japanese urban legend that appears at like train yards, that has a very similar physical appearance, because it's someone that's been cut in half by a bullet train, and they're now crawling around on their hands with their head flopped over the back of their body. And of course, it exists to spook you because it's an urban legend, but it's basically the same fear manifested in a different culture, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, there's something. All these cultures are very different, but I think there's like a subconscious human connection, I guess, there with
Like
a lot of it.
a primal base.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can find a picture of this creature just so you can.
While you're looking for that, like these little similarities we just talked about, I think your game really does a valuable service here, because it shows that even though we do come from different cultures, we're actually a lot more similar than we are different. Like we do tend to believe a lot of the same things, and they may have variations, but they're still very similar, very common ground. If we could build on that common ground, it really makes all the difference.
I can't find a good picture. I think that's why I didn't illustrate that one, because it was like I couldn't find a good picture of it.
I mean, the fun part here is Basic has kicked Onyx Path's ass. if you're unaware, Basic, Onyx Path, the guys who do New World of Darkness, released a trio of books, Dark Eras, Dark Eras 2, and the Dark Eras Companion, which were all essentially curated, or house rules, however you want to put it, for running World of Darkness in different time periods. And one of their settings is, I want to say, it's either Aztec or Inca, right? Now, it's not bad, right? It covers a very superficial amount of information, but at the same time, because it deals with their own meta lore of the God Machine, it's like a horror story about Mesoamerican pyramid UFOs. It's not very realistic. It doesn't really deep dive into that culture and get you immersed in it. As we're talking about this, we're more talking about the experience as a simulator than its fantastical elements, because a lot of it is just, this is what they believed, this is how the world worked, this is the world that you want to immerse yourself in. And I think that that's neat, because when you've seen me in conversation, when there are talks about how I want more and varied settings than just Tolkien or Oriental adventures, this is what I mean. I've I'm a white dude in America. I know what being a white dude in America is. I have friends who are Latin American, but let's face it, in a modern context, they're Americans.
Yeah, like I'm American. Like, yes, I have
Right.
the
I have a
ancestry going back to this, but I still had to
I have
research
a
this.
I have a friend in Rio, right, in South America, in Brazil, and that's different. But he's still like a modern dude. We still talk about the same things. This is a wildly different culture. If I sink into this, it's a different flavor. I'm like exploring different elements of a person that I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that I think we're looking for when it comes to pseudo historical role playing, is to really get immersed in something that's not native, not normal to us. So
Yeah,
I think this is great.
Yeah, and I just felt like if I were to try and do something that was, if I tried to present this as I want it to be, or like how our modern sensibilities want it to be, then it would have, again, it would have cheapened it. It wouldn't have felt right. I would have felt gross doing that, because we see that so often with lots of different settings and things like that, and some of it even comes from like people of that ancestry, of that culture, and like they show a fundamental misunderstanding of their own heritage in some instances, and I didn't want to do that to an aspect of my own heritage where I wanted to immerse myself in it whether I liked it or not. And I'll be honest, like I'm part these people, and I'm part Spanish. I'll be honest, like, I'm kind of glad my Spanish ancestors won, because as much as I find as much as I find this setting like super interesting and this history super cool and unique and rich and everything, I wouldn't want to live in it. So,
Right.
You're not exactly keen on picking up a weapon and just having to having to go to war or something like that. But I mean, dude, we're both gun guys. I know that you don't have a problem picking up and strapping up and protecting yourself, your family, your home.
Yeah.
I know that you don't have a problem with that. So there's that you share in common. However, being completely raised on that, I think probably would. I think most of us would have a problem with that.
Being born and being like, yeah, I might have my heart cut out of my chest at some point on top of a sacred stone on top of a pyramid, and I'm okay with that. Like that's just the mentality that I wouldn't ever want to be in.
And this is something White Rat popped up just real quick. I've had it here on the screen because I did want to get to this. Controversies surrounding the game. I know you posted one where someone was actually asking you if this was part of your heritage before they backed it. I was like, oh,
they didn't back it. They didn't back it. Anyone that's asked me this question on Kickstarter, it still shows that they're not a backer. So,
and it's super rude, in my opinion. Look, it's the weirdest thing. I've talked to you before, and you've told me things, and I've seen your face, and I understand that you're brown, basically. I've noticed you're brown. It's the weirdest thing. But in matter of point, it's none of my business.
Yep.
Okay. You could get really deep into it and tell me whatever you want. And I'd be like, oh, that's really interesting. But it's not mine to ask. I think this thing of people literally walking up and being like, what's the contents of your underwear? Is like, who the fuck do you think you are?
Yeah.
What matters is the product, and whether or not the product approaches the material with respect. And you've done that legwork. Because
I want to be known for like doing a good job on this, not that like I have the right ancestry to make it. Like I want people to look at it and be like, oh, he did a lot of research and he did a good job designing it, doing layout, art, everything. And it's not because he has the right blood in his veins, but it's because he did a good job and he created something cool, and that's what I want. I would feel disappointed if someone, that's what frustrated me with the one comment I shared from my Facebook ad that really bothered me. What was the guy asked that question, and I was like, yes, I'm of that ancestry, but I don't think that's what it is. And I gave my whole spiel, like I spent 2 years researching this deeply. It means a lot to me, and I would support this game if it was made by someone who wasn't of this race. And his response was just, "Oh, good. I just wanted to make sure that someone wasn't profiting off of someone else's culture." And it's like, I'm not really Aztec either, though. Like, yes, I have the blood, but like, I don't. I go to church on Sundays. I'm still a Christian. I'm not.
It's even worse in two ways. Because one, you have those people like the guys that made Wolf and Crow or whatever, Coyote and Crow, right? Yeah. They're screaming from the top of their lungs their indigenous origins. Like that is not just a selling point, but that is the primary point. If you don't support their game because of their ethnicity, you're a racist, which we all agree is BS, right? Because it's the question of, is the game any good? Does the game do something interesting with its material?
I'll admit, when I first heard about Coyote and Crow, I was kind of interested.
Oh yeah,
and then they kept talking, acting, and I was like, I'm no longer interested.
That's the thing. It was interesting, and then they kept talking.
And then this one from Stu, he says, I'm very interested in reading the spell and magic descriptions of your game. Yeah, because you did a take on Vancian magic. Still going with the Vancian magic, which I think most people who play D&D are familiar with and have come to know and love. Let's talk about that for a minute, because I know we've grounded it reality, and now we're adding those fantasy layers on top of it. But this wasn't so much fantasy. This was stuff that they actually kind of believed in.
Well, give me a second. There's one more thing I wanted to mention real quick.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is very pertinent here is you mentioned this idea that people were like, well, I wanted to make sure somebody wasn't profiteering off of another culture. We talk about the status of indigenous peoples in America, and that's pretty awful, right? But in South America and in Central America, the conquistadores and the priests literally destroyed ancient works. They burned the books. You talk about a destroyed culture. Mesoamerica's culture was more completely destroyed than we will ever know. And what we've got are remnants. I would actually posit that it's got to be the other way around. Anyone that's trying to save Aztec culture and Inca culture and Olmec or Toltec culture, even in pop culture, by making a game out of it, is doing a service. And I think we need to seriously take into consideration that any information we preserve is valuable.
I agree.
Just because we can live in a world where this doesn't exist at all, and I think that's way worse. Like there are very few ethnic members of certain subgroups, like in Peru and shit, that exist anymore because their cultures were destroyed so completely. But yeah, let's talk about magic. Magic's way more fun.
Yeah, I didn't want to. So the magic is, I tried to keep it in the flavor. These aren't like real. I didn't go in depth in like real spells of like what did they believe they could do. Like a lot of their magic was in sorcery was divination and shapeshifting and stuff like that, which is covered in the book. But I wanted to have, I didn't want to reinvent the wheel with the spell slot system, because I felt like the Vancian magic works really well. But I wanted to change how spells were acquired, and to give it a greater Aztec feel. Because the Nuahali is a spellcaster, and he's very much like a magic user and cleric, and even like I guess a thief as far as fighting ability, kind of melded into one. Not in thief skills, but just in like he's okay at fighting. Because everyone here has the ability to fight, because again, everyone was trained to fight. But yeah, I made 37 new spells. They're original creations with like an Aztec flavor to them, and you can kind of see their names on here and everything. And the way you acquire spells is through a reaction roll. Obviously, you can sacrifice in order to increase, get a boon from the gods in order to increase your chances of getting a spell. But I wanted to make spell acquisition not like a cleric, where like it is like a cleric where in theory a character has level 1 Nuahali has access to all of these spells. But if he wants a specific spell, he has to ask the gods of it, and there's a chance on a reaction roll he's not going to get it. And if it fails, 2 or less, it gets really bad. The bells are the gods are very unhappy. He might not be able to get it for up to almost a week again. And he can't petition for that spell again, or it might just be denied, or he might have to keep petitioning the gods, and it will take another hour. It takes 2 hours to get the spell. It might take another hour, and this puts things in a time crunch as well. I think where let me make this a little bigger so that you guys can read it better. It could put things in a time crunch. I mentioned on Diversity and Dragon stream, like you might have a time crunch on the players where there's a ticking clock, and that Nwahali's trying to get that spell, but the gods are not on their sides. And acquisition is also affected by the calendar, the zodiac sign. So if it's out of the sign, if you're petitioning the god who's not in power during this zodiac sign, might be a little more difficult to get a spell. So,
well, that's also neat because it answers a different problem that we've talked, not you and I specifically, but in general has been talked about, where we discussed the idea of the rarity and the potency of magic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because there are people that believe that a game should have an active magical economy with lots of magic items, and there are people that are like, no magic items ever, because somehow even one magic item will ruin the soup, right? And here, with this system, what you're basically saying is, look, even if you have the magic, you don't own the magic. The magic's a gift. You beg to use the magic, and that means that when you decide to use magic, you have to plan it well. It has to be done in advance, and the conditions have to be auspicious, because if it doesn't work, you don't get another shot.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can look at a couple spells. I know that he wanted to hear some. So, some of them are basic, like enhanced strength and stuff like that. Blessing of Tezcatlipoca, Blood Curse of Tlaloc. This one was fun, I guess. So this is a powerful, and I do components. That's not something to 0E, but I like the concept of components. And the flavor, the flavor
I do like that.
It adds flavor to a spell, I feel like. And 0E spells are so open-ended and weird that it adds some flavor to that. But this is a powerful curse that invokes the dark and vengeful god of rain and lightning Tlaloc to affect the target with a terrible curse. The caster draws the blood of the target. Once the curse is inflicted, the target suffers a permanent reduction of 2 points to their Constitution score, or 1d6 to max HP. NPCs who lack attribute scores. And their skin becomes mottled with dark blue markings that resemble raindrops. Additionally, the target becomes vulnerable to lightning damage, taking double damage from any lightning-based attacks. The curse can only be removed by a powerful ritual requiring the use of rare and expensive materials, or by a deity willing to intervene on the target's behalf. Those cursed by Tlaloc are often shunned and feared by society, and their lives are plagued by misfortune and tragedy. This spell only works on humans. A save is allowed. So, this is a higher level, 4th level spell. You just ruin someone's entire life with a curse.
This is like that dude that got ran through toxic waste and what was it, RoboCop? Help me! Get away from me, man!
Don't touch me! Yet again, adding in things that I really like that don't appear in your regular D&D. I'm constantly telling people it's like adventurers are a discredited and disreputable subclass, and it's like, but why? It's like, because they are crazy people who leave the village or leave their town and they go into caves and they fight monsters and they come back with money, and they don't have a place in regular society, and people don't get it. Here you have this idea that it's like, yeah, if I throw this curse on you, I've not only damaged you physically, but I have ruined your life, and no one wants to associate with you because they might get cursed too.
No. And going back to what White Rat said, right here in this game, we need someone's skin color before we form an opinion. Especially if they're blue and mottled. We need to know that.
Oh, yes. Blue people are insufficient. Green skin master race. I like me some Orion slave girls.
But in this case, blue and mottled would mean just, I don't want to be hit by lightning, so you're going to sit on that side of the church today.
Yeah. You sit outside with the dogs.
Yeah. You just listen through the doorway, and don't be too close to the doorway.
But we've been friends forever. Not today.
You're cursed, bud. So let's go back to this. I'm going to full screen this now again, because Well, I do really want people to see this, and because it's so cool. I mean, again, look at these, ladies and gentlemen. If you, especially those into old school stuff, look at these borders, look at the lettering, look at the art. This does just like you said you didn't want to write a heartbreaker, John. I'm looking at a heart warmer. Amazing.
Well, I wanted to have the nostalgia there, but I still wanted it to be different from what your typical thing would be.
And real quick, just as an aside, I learned last night this is going to be like a digest sized book.
Yep. Yeah.
Look,
yes.
Wolfgar. John wrote it. He knew the fastest way to your heart was through the rib cage.
There you go.
But you want to know something else funny?
A heart ripper.
You'll love this. So there's a guy on like our RPG somewhere who apparently is making a weapons list of Mesoamerican weapons. I don't think he knows your game exists, or he does, and he's just trying to do his own thing. That's fine, whatever. But he showed off his list to the internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And somebody said you should get rid of the bronze axe, right? so he literally pulled a Wikipedia and was like, "Here's the bronze axe they had." So, like, everyone on the internet is an expert, and everyone thinks they write better than everyone else.
And they're probably from Reddit.
And they're probably wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw that guy's Reddit posts, and I figured like he probably was really mad when he saw my Kickstarter go live and was like, "Oh crap."
Oh, the second I started working on my book, somebody else came forward and was like, "I'm working on a vampire book too," and I was like, "Oh, that's great." Now I actually meant it. I think there's enough room for all kinds of interpretations, but from a business angle, it's like, damn, competition's no good.
Well,
but we do what we got to do.
Well, again, a lot of these old ancient cultures from just our little world here, our little blue ball, our specks sitting in space, they're being revived, they're being explored. The question is, who do you trust to explore them? Do you trust yourself, or do you trust someone in, say, Seattle? This is obviously like we're saying, get with that DIY attitude. And I'm so glad you're making this digest size, because I could fit it right up here on my desk hutch. If I could possibly squeeze any more room out of it, I'm gonna, because I went with the offset print, the POD, and the PDF, because I was like, I want one book to hand to my players, or a PDF to kind of share with players, or something I could just print out myself, and then have that offset book just for me, because I'm like that. But here's a good one. 5e curse spell. Your enemy has maybe a disease for an hour until they succeed the save. Basic experts game. You're shunned by people. Lightning scorches your flesh off, and the gods hate you. I love this. Right on. Yeah, go right ahead. Let's see some more. I'm all about it at this point.
I actually already have an amazing like campaign idea for this. But it's both it's horrible, and I don't know if anyone would actually play it though.
Write it.
You might not be familiar, but there's a there's a ritual in Aztec theology with a ritual murder where they drown a guy, right? But the thing is that in the lead up to that drowning, he is basically elevated and treated like a king all year. Like, they'll give him everything he wants, right? So you take this person, and you the structure for your game is like you're his honor guard. You are given this person to protect and to serve in any conceivable way they can imagine, so that your players really get to like them, right? But you have the foreknowledge that at the end of this year, after a year of adventures and fun and party and whatever, you have to watch the priest just shove his face in a bowl of water until he stops moving.
So we'll look at Xipe Totec's skinning ritual, because this is actually something real priest to Xipe Totec actually did. So it's a 4th level spell. It's very powerful. It's touch, instantaneous. A sharp obsidian a component is a sharp obsidian knife, which is used to cut the sacrificial victim's skin, flay their skin.
Yeah.
So it says this gruesome spell calls upon the power of Xipe Totec, the Aztec god of renewal, agriculture, and sacrifice, to flay the skin from the victim's body. The caster must flay the victim with a sharp obsidian knife. The caster then wears the skin as a gruesome symbol of the devotion to Xipe Totec, gaining a +2 bonus to reaction rolls due to intimidation, and the wearer's AC is improved by 2. The skin will last for 36 days before it begins to stink. At this point, the AC improvement is lost, and the wearer will receive a -2 penalty to reaction rolls due to the smell. So they would actually wear their skin. The priest would wear the skin of the victim for like 20 days. Actually, I shortened it a little bit because I wanted to not make it super uber powerful. But these are the kinds of things that you can do in this game. But this is like something they really did.
Wow.
Gruesome stuff. They actually wore the flayed skin of others, and I thought it'd be cool to gamify it and have it be like a reaction roll thing and a AC improvement thing.
So
well.
Leatherface.
I'm gonna sound like a crazy person. I actually did that in a game of Vampire once.
White Rat says there was an episode of Kolchak the Night Stalker. I remember this one. I did go back and watch reruns. I love that show.
I got the one. I know that episode.
Where a man played by Eric Estrada is treated like a king for a year before having his heart torn out.
Yep.
Yeah, they did that. Yeah.
And does this victim need to be alive before casting this spell? That was the question.
That's up to the referee. This is 0E. You can make your own rulings.
Oh wow!
Vampire the Requiem. There's a bloodline of Witcharoo that are later 19th century Aztec cultists. That they're trying to combine Catholicism with Aztec imagery. So their cult is completely BS. But one of their rituals is flensing the skin off of a living human and wearing it. And because I'm a whack job, just a little bit, I had a character like this, and he was really mellow, and everyone thought he was really, even-tempered and was a wise monster. And then there was a night where it's like, I can't be at gathering, I have something to do. So somebody followed me. They're like, I'm going to find out what he's up to. He's up to something, right? And yeah, they got to watch me do, in role play, skin a dude's face off and wear it. And they were like, and they did. They went back and they told their friends, like, he is so crazy. He is so not right.
He lost it.
Well, we'll look at this. I'll show this last spell here too. Gaze of Quetzalcoatl. It's another 4th level spell, kind of like a divination spell, where you can kind of spy on other people. The cast. I need to fix that. There's a typo there. Awesome. The caster is able to see through the eyes of the mythical serpent god Quetzalcoatl, gaining insights and information beyond mortal ken. The caster must hold a feather from a Quetzal bird aloft during the casting of the spell. Once cast, the caster's eyes are closed and they fall into a trance-like state, able to see and hear from any point within range, as if they are physically present. The caster can choose to move their point of view to any location within range during the spell's duration, but their physical body remains in a trance-like state and is vulnerable to attack. So you probably want to protect your caster who's doing this if they're using them to spy on an enemy camp or something like that. The spell also allows the caster to understand any language spoken within range. However, the caster's senses are focused solely on what they can see and hear, and they are unable to take any other actions while the spell is in effect. So I just tried to make spells like this, and you got like 37 of them that are, some of them kind of harken back to old school, like the floor charm of Xochiquetzal is like the charm spell, but there's other spells that are totally unique and everything. So
yet again, things I like that is how it ties back into the subject reality of the game, because the winged serpent's a bro. He's a wisdom symbol, and he's a good luck symbol. He does all kinds of positive things, and here's a spell that invokes him, right? And I, of course, being a fan of older D&D and the like, I remember when you could run into a Quetzalcoatl in D&D, right? But in modern D&D, they don't have the winged serpent. And it's like, why? Just because he's not an antagonist? Just because you don't fight him? Because you shouldn't want to fight the winged serpent. You should be like, oh, winged serpent, you have come. What wisdoms do you have?
Hmm.
And hopefully he's not going to have to bite you in the face to impart them.
I'll read one more actually, because it's kind of a fun one that you can mess with your players with. I can remember which one it is.
I mean, we all like messing with our players.
That's what I love about original D&D so much, is that there weren't that many rules. You could that's why I say this does tend to make the more rules light it is, the more your GM will benefit, because the GM can then make rulings that make sense. They can kind of make a ruling, go back and look for a rule later, come back and discuss with the table. That kind of builds it. Now, as you advance through different systems, the more crunch that there is to it, the better you can kind of figure out how closely to that rule set you actually want to play.
I mean, as long as it's a flexible framework, because
True,
we've had games that are both too flexible, where there's not enough rules to actually be a game. It's just collaborative fireside chat. And we've had games that are so rule dense that they're unapproachable. You can't even try to play it, because it's like, what am I looking at?
Were you playing Fatal?
I mean, I argue Fatal is not a game. Fatal is like a collective cancer we all have. Oh, it's extra bad, because somebody came to me just this week and was like, Joe, what's Fatal? And I'm like, where did you find out about that? Who told you? And they're like, oh, I just heard about it. And it's like, you're the game guy. And I'm like, it exists. Don't read it.
Yeah, don't go near it.
And they're like, why? And it's like, I read it once, never again. I wouldn't subject anyone to that. I had to dig up an old RPG.net review of it, because they're like, this is as close as you get. Read this. Do not read it. Do not go get this game. Don't do it.
That was traumatic to read. I really wish I hadn't.
Oh yeah. Well, because that was also, I went and dug up the review of Bella Maga, because the person in question is a indie comic dev who's making a comic that's basically Sailor Moon plus Gem with a goth flavor.
Oh, wow.
Right? Whether you like it or not's irrelevant. It's just that's the flavor she's going with, and that's okay, right?
I guess.
I was like, if you want to see something awful, here's Female Empowerment, the game. It's like Bad Mage the Awakening, and she's like, what's this? And I gave it to her, and then I was like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I've inflicted this on you. Please don't read it.
I had to read it, and now it's your problem, and you're going to share it with friends, because ain't no way I'm suffering alone.
Right. Exactly.
But I'll share this last spell. I wanted to share this last one of Divination of Tezcatlipoca, because it just kind of shows, like a rules light thing that's very simple, but you can mess with players with it. So it's the second level, so you can get to it pretty quickly. You use an obsidian mirror or reflective surface. So you could use a mirror or a bowl of water or anything that is reflective.
So scrying, basically.
Mm-hmm. Because Tezcatlipoca is the god of sorcery and all this kind of stuff. His name is like the smoking mirror. That's like what his name is. He's believed to have omnipresence, and he is able to have omnipresence because he's able to view our world through any reflective surface. If there's any reflective surface, just Tezcatlipoca can see you. So, this spell allows the caster to commune with the god Tezcatlipoca via a reflective surface like a mirror or a bowl of water. The caster may ask a number of questions equal to his level of Tezcatlipoca. These questions must be answerable with a yes or no. A secret reaction roll must be made towards the god. If the roll is anything less than favorable, Tezcatlipoca will give false information. The god does enjoy some chaos.
Oh no. This god is not exactly a reliable narrator, ladies and gentlemen. You gotta watch yourself.
He's the god of conflict and strife. So let's say you're asking the god of like, would now be a good time to attack my enemies, and he's like, you roll a bad reaction roll, and he's like, I feel like having some conflict and strife right now. Yes, do it. You're gonna lose, but
That was a great time to go attack your enemies. Go ahead, do that.
Yeah.
Let me know how it works out. Oh, you will let me know how it works out.
and again, because it actually says there in the spell, all of the questions are yes and no. So if you ask, is now a good time to attack my enemy? He goes, yes. And it's like, can you help me win? And it's like, yes. Will you help me win? No.
It's sort of like that scene in Conan the Barbarian where Mako's character says, I carry the favor of the gods. And he goes, are they going to help us out? He goes, no. He goes, well, tell them to stay the hell out of the way. Oh, man. We've got like less than 20 minutes left. And you know what? John, I'm just literally going to hand the floor to you on this one, because anything we've left on the table, I don't want to leave anything on the table, because I do want to help get even more eyes on this game. And just to let everyone know, link is going to be in the description down below, whether you're watching us on YouTube or Cloud Hub, which we're live on both of those right now. We're live on Twitter, and we'll be doing the replay on Rumble and Odyssey as well. So make sure you pay attention to that. You can go to the Kickstarter, you can back it, or you can just bookmark it for later if you just don't have the money right now. It's fully funded. There are no stretch goals. This is your first Kickstarter, isn't it?
First Kickstarter, not my first game, obviously, but
not the first game, but definitely first Kickstarter. It's already successful. We got 354 backers. We got 22 days left to go. Let's see if we can blow this thing completely out of the water, make it a bestseller. But from here on out, dude, the floor is yours. Just go right ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I probably have to go soon anyway, so it's perfect timing. But yeah, it's it's a passion project for me, and I guess I also want to say, like, I'm just thankful that everyone is willing to check it out and look at this thing, because I wasn't sure when I did this, like, if people would really be interested. Like I said, there's not a lot of this kind of stuff out there, and I was kind of a shot in the dark, a leap of faith, if I can make this successful or not. And I've been really happy with the people that I have been able to do it. And this is despite, like, I will say, and I don't fault them for it, I kind of get why it's a touchy, questionable subject matter in this game. But I reached out to, like, larger YouTubers that might be interested in covering it, and no one has given me the time of day as far as, like, looking at this or covering it. So the fact that we hit our goal and have exceeded it in such a short amount of time is just like, I'm humbled and grateful for that. I can't express how thankful I am to that. But yeah, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, and I will say, like, even if you want to just drop, like, an Aztec style culture within your OD&D or BX game or something like that, your AD&D game, you will be able to. This will be roughly compatible with everything there. So, you want to have classes, you want to have monsters, you want to have some setting, history, and lore stuff. It's all here in the book. So, and it's a couple questions I've had too. Is like, is this, obviously we've kind of seen it, but is this a complete game? Yes, it is. Like, you don't need to own any other game to play this game. I'll say, like, it has all the rules, the basic rules you need to run it in this. So.
And real quick, how many pages is this thing going to be?
Of content, it's about 174 pages so far.
That's not bad. That's not a colossal book. And it said it's a nice fit with the city state of Draj and Dark Sun. I could see that. One final question that I've had, and I've had it on my brain ever since we started, and I really wanted to kind of get into this. You're a father yourself, as you've brought up before. If your child were to pick this game off your shelf and say, "Dad, I want to play this," what has that crossed your mind? Because I know you've posted pictures to us on your server of your child, like, wanting to play with the miniatures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she plays with dungeon tiles and miniatures and stuff, and She likes to roll the dice and pretend that she's playing. Honestly, this is probably a game I would not play with children. At least not children that can handle it. I would say you got to probably at least be like maybe junior high and up at the very least to like kind of get these concepts, you know, because there is a lot of adult stuff in here. Obviously, you know,
like obviously you're not going to let your child, you know, at her age now watch Apocalypto or something like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, later on down the line, she picks this book off the shelf, sees it, goes through it and goes, Dad, I'd really like you to run this game for me and my friends. You know, that's got to be something that's popped up in your mind. I imagine that would be a source of pride if she wanted to actually do that.
For sure. Yeah. But again, probably when she's older, because I don't know. If you're running a game for children and you have to water down the sacrifice and stuff, like I don't feel like you're actually teaching them history at that point.
Right.
You're not teaching them something, you know. And like you said, some people, they see this kind of stuff and they input it in their brain as like facts. And so that's another reason why I wanted to be as accurate as I could be with this. So yeah, it is that fine line, but I would say like this, you know, this is definitely a darker game. Like you can take regular D&D and really tone it down for kids very easily. You know, it's very easy to take D&D and run it for 6-year-olds, like regular vanilla D&D, and run it for 6, 7, 8-year-olds, and they're going to have fun and you're going to have fun. Everyone's going to have fun, but this is like really hard to do if you're going to try and do that with children, just because I feel like you'd have to censor too much.
And Esoteric Order of Nerdity says, I'm probably going to use Macuahuitl as my in one of my fantasy settings, either Chronicles of Afterlight for a resurgent Aztec Empire, or one of my worlds that has historical culture analogs. Which
and it will work for that.
You can do that.
I mean, just make sure you're using the right Bach tune.
This, oh man, like I'm gonna say this. Here's one of the reasons that I say back this game. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. PDF has this white on black with red lettering cover. The POD will probably have that as well. Am I correct in that? Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it the same color scheme.
But the offset print will be a black cover with that with the red. I think that a calendar.
That is a sacred Aztec calendar. Yeah.
Okay. And here's just a quick question since we're bringing it up. Does that have any significance in the game itself? Because I know for a while there, everyone. There were people around me that were going on about the December 12th, 2012. And I was like, you know what's going to happen? You're going to wake up the next day hungover. That's what's going to happen.
Yes, the calendar does play a part. We didn't really mention it here, but I mentioned it on other streams and whatnot. You do roll on this table here to determine your character's zodiac sign, which does affect good or bad. Could be bad. And you have all the different signs here. And I added the associated god with that sign. What your character sign is, and it comes with a benefit or a bane. Like, so this is an unlucky sign. If you're captured, you got a -2 penalty to all skill checks or whatever. If you're captured, you're pretty much doomed to be sacrificed.
Oh,
sign.
Damn.
And some of them are good, you know, like this is a generally lucky one. You can increase a score of your choice by 1 up to a maximum of 18, and you get a bonus +1 to your hit point total starting. So I had stuff like this to that. And then there's also, they had sacred within those 13 days. You have a lucky day boon or an unlucky day bane that could occur. So yes, the zodiac sign, the sacred calendar that is on the cover does affect your character.
Hey, Wolfgar, if you need a guideline, you have it now. The smoking jaguar is in whatever realm he exists in, laughing, and he's like, "So I told them on 2012 the world was going to end, and they believed it."
And all the guys are sitting there laughing. It's like that meme. They're just all
right.
They just ran out of rock. That was one of my favorite jokes to tell. I was like, has anyone just, I don't know, kind of thought maybe they just ran out of stone and didn't feel like continuing? I mean, it's like a calendar, ladies and gentlemen. You get rid of a calendar every year.
They're like a few thousand years in the future. That's enough time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've got plenty of time.
Well, I mean, our empire is going to last forever. The sun will rise, right?
Oh sure. Yeah.
Oddly enough, again, vampire stories with Joe. A friend of mine I haven't seen in a while because life happens. Named Josh. We got together. We made characters for a game, and again, we're a Mesoamerican blood cult of vampires, and his character's name was Grandfather Rabbit, and we got very deep into the calendar and the zodiac as you do, and it's like, no, he's the darkest guy. I don't know why everyone trusts Grandfather Rabbit. Grandfather Rabbit's the one you should be worried about. But because modern players with modern sensibilities, they're like, okay, I'm worried about the giant murder beast, and I'm worried about the guy that's a bat monster, but come on, rabbits aren't dangerous. Rabbits are lovely. And then you tell people that in Mesoamerican theology, rabbit was a sign of evil. It's like, what?
Have they never seen Monty Python? Is my question.
Right.
The Vorpal Bunny.
It's got the pointy teeth.
Yeah.
It's got the pointy teeth.
Yeah, as soon as they charge toward it, it's Jesus Christ, run away! they have to take a holy hand grenade to
again,
dispatch it.
It's similar to rat in Chinese mythology. I tell people rat was a sign of prosperity, and they're like, but rats are gross. It's like, yeah, if you have a lot of rats, that means there's a lot of food, so there's prosperity.
Yep. Very true.
If you have a lot of rabbits, there's a problem.
Yeah, I was born year of the horse, so
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't even know what that means. I should probably know, but I don't. And I just a couple channel announcements before we leave. Number one, I am off this Wednesday. I will probably not be able to do a reading this Wednesday. However, I think I will be doing one the following Saturday. Reason being that I will be kicking off my vacation. If I just got to get the rest of the time approved. Apparently, only like 2/3 of it got approved for some reason. I don't know. I don't get it. But I will be resuming probably on that Saturday, so be on the lookout for that. This will be the first time in a long time I've done a weekly reading on a Saturday, but also the Rune of the Week and the Havamal series will also pick up that day, so be on the lookout for that. And there will be more channel announcements ahead. Some of you already know, if you've been paying attention to my social media, you know what's occurred recently. So I'm going to be planning so a little bit more content going forward. How that's going to work out, I don't know yet. I'm still trying to work a lot of this out. But
so doom storms, prepare your sacrifices, so we'll return.
Look, don't be doing anything crazy, okay? All right. So esoteric order of nerdity here. Gull says, "Oh, I am in fact year of the rat." So yes, you are all about that prosperity. And I think finally, one more time, because I'm going to say it. Link in the description below. Go there, bookmark it, share it with. If you just can't back it, share it out with your friends, share it out with your family. Share it out with anybody who likes games, because this one is unique. I am, I have a ton of fantasy games. Most of my games are fantasy. And honestly, I've stopped buying fantasy games or clones because frankly, if they're all going to be just the same with different rule sets, I really want something with a lore and a setting that's going to be unique. This is it right here. And of course, I think serves as a prime example of why we should be researching and doing our own thing. And it shows you, yes, this can be popular, and I'll prove it to you right here, because obviously 10,898 of a $10,000 goal.
Mm-hmm.
It can be done, ladies and gentlemen. It can be done with the right people, and unfortunately, even those who big league this game, well, their big leaguing tastes like fear and disappointment to me, and that makes me happy. very happy. John, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being so generous with your time. I know you got a lot going on. Thank you for this game, dude.
Oh, no
Like
problem.
seriously, this is awesome. I cannot wait to see it in full, and I think I'm in for a huge surprise when it hits my door.
I mean, I can't wait to see the next thing. Whatever that thing is, I want to see the next thing.
Okay, yeah. Let's go with that. Is there anything next for you, or are you going to be supporting what you have right now?
I'm working on a couple different things. One thing I'm working on is expanded weapons and creatures and monsters for Atomic Punk, because I wanted to have like a larger, more. I just wanted more stuff for that. So I don't know when that's going to be out. I'm slowly working on that, and I think after this project, I'm probably going to just take a break and chill for a little bit, work on my zine a little bit, try and catch that up, and just relax before I dive into the next thing that's going to consume my life. So
for Atomic Punk, would that be like a third edition, or would that just be like an expansion? Because I know with the second edition copy I have, I think it was probably about maybe a couple months after that, you were like, I forgot to throw this in, and I was like, oh shit.
it was one of my intentions with that is what I forgot in that was a random encounter table, because I reference it in the book and I'm like, there's a random encounter table, and it just like slipped my mind.
Yeah,
and it didn't make it, and then no one told me. Like no one's brought up that no one's brought up that criticism. It was me who found it, and I was like, why didn't anyone tell? Like someone had to.
My ass was so big.
Yeah,
it's like that commercial in the 80s. You got that guy sitting in the chair, his head's all blown back, and he's just wearing sunglasses in front of the speaker.
The Memorex commercial, yeah.
Right. It's like, why didn't you tell the basic expert? And he's just like, because they're all blown away by the content.
So what I think I'll do is I'll probably release, and I've been meaning to do it and I forgot. So thank you for reminding me. I should release just that table as just like a free PDF download or something like that, so that you can print it up and like put it in your book, or just have it ready to go.
I was gonna say, if you combined it into a third edition, I'm gonna buy it.
I feel bad with that.
I still have to buy a print copy of the first edition, because I love the first edition. I love the second edition too, but I was like, I did want to just have those in my shelf just for giggles. But yeah, definitely the Atomic Punk is, of course, one of my favorites. I do love that game. And for those of you who don't know, it's basically Fallout, the role-playing game. It's just a lot less expensive and a lot cooler, in my opinion. Cowpunchers Reloaded, of course, pick that one up too. That's a work that myself and John are very proud of. We both worked on it. And Being Gun Guys, I got to tell this story real quick. I kept going through. I didn't know that these Google Doc edits would be live. So I'm doing this. I'm making notes. I get to the section on weapons, which there are just tons and tons of revolvers and pistols and shotguns and rifles. And I noticed he kept referencing a trigger pull, and I've got Harley Davidson and Marlboro Man in my head, so I'm picturing John as like the Mickey Rourke character, and it wasn't like actually frustrated, but I was kind of like, this again. So I would change that to trigger squeeze, because the way I was taught was you squeeze your whole hand, let the shot come as a surprise, your groupings will get tighter, and that worked. And I kept putting squeeze in there, and then finally I came down. I didn't know it was the last one, but I came down and I put in the notes, it's squeeze, don't pull, it ain't your dick.
I'm gonna throw this joke out there, but I hope Basic takes it and runs with it. You need to release a little source book called The Basic Leftovers.
Basic Leftovers? What the fuck is The Basic Leftovers?
It's errata from Basic's various game lines.
Oh yeah, okay.
The Basic Leftovers, right?
Yeah, okay, and a errata page, right? Okay.
Yeah,
The Basic Leftovers.
Leftovers.
Yeah. With the new PDF, that's the one great thing about PDFs. If you get one that something was not included, well, now the new PDF can include it, and you can still keep both copies. So that's one of the things I love about PDF books. They're great, but when a mistake like that happens, yeah, you're gonna have to have an errata page there.
I felt bad for that. So yeah, I plan on doing. I just haven't. I've been so consumed with this, but I will release the random encounter table for free for people so that they have it.
No.
Right on. One of the basic leftovers could be an OSR version of that old HBO show, The Leftovers. I'll be honest with you, I don't remember that show. I don't think I ever got to see that one.
I'd rather have an OSR version of Tales from the Crypt.
What? Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
That'd be a game. Well, I mean, they kind of have that. It's called 10 Candles. Yeah, they have that. It's called 10 Candles. Try it sometime. It's basically made for those one shots. But again, John, thanks so much, man. This was really huge. On top of that, I've got to announce this. We tested running the live stream on Cloud Hub as well. It was successful, so it's still going right now, and thankfully it worked because I get more views there than just about anywhere else. So we got a lot of those eyes on this game. Hopefully some of you on Cloud Hub, those of you on YouTube, those of you watching us on Twitter, no matter where it is, and later on Rumble and Odyssey, get your tails down to the Kickstarter. Links in the description below. Thanks again to all of you for joining us. Thanks to you again, John. I can't thank you enough because this is amazing. And I wanted to close this out by saying, just remember, we love you all. Always play what lights you up, and as always, play on. Later.